Hello all, it's that time of year again for the game room tour. Now, before I begin the tour, I'll just mention the fact that I think last time, or maybe it's the last 2 years, I'll do this on a yearly basis, I've said that perhaps this is the last time you're going to see this room. Well, it's not. You're seeing it again this time because still I haven't moved out of this particular place. The chances are next year you won't see this room, at least not in the same way, because there's going to be big changes next year, but I will say no more on that and start what could be the last tour of this room in this current state, at least. And what a state it is in, to be honest. And this time I've purposely not tidied it, there you go, because I thought it'd be very interesting to show what happens when you're a games collector and you run out of room, and some of the creative decisions you have to make in order to store your game collection. Now, I presume some of you who already subscribed to the channel have seen the room before, but I'm just going to do a quick sort of pan around to show you what it looks like and the current state of it. For those who have never seen the game room before, it was once very humble, and over the years has become a lot more busy, and in the point where it is very difficult to access certain things. You know, say if I wanted to get this game out, for instance, it's not gonna happen. So let's start from this side of the room, where you just saw that this is my collection of, first of all, this is Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games. You can see on the top there's DS games, and even a 3DS game. It is a point where it's sort of like overspill. The DS games usually kept in the drawer around that room. Here are the 3DS games. This is all my 3DS games, bar a couple which are over there, which I don't have room for. And then more Game Boy Advance games here. I think that's all Advance, and maybe there's a couple of, no, I think they're Advance as well in the corner. So there's a sort of order to that. Here, I think the first thing you might notice is the stack of PS2 games, which I don't know if it's got any bigger. I don't think it could get any bigger from last time, but it doesn't go all the way down to the floor. It goes down to this Rock Band keyboard box down there, but it starts again next to it up to a certain point and then continues. This is maybe what you haven't seen, or maybe you've seen something similar to this continuation. Now, since then, that pile has got higher, so any new PS2 games, actually I'm just going to show you down here, there's some new PS2 games, so they just ended up there, and that shows that this room is not organised. But it's difficult, you know, especially when I started to put in PS2 games in this little gap here. Now, the Saturn collection, this is Japanese Saturn games, overspilled from its initial see, I can't even get to them anymore because I've had to put these overspill. These are Game Boy and Game Gear, and that is Game Boy Color, and there's some import Game Boy Color behind that. Sorry, I think it's Game Boy Advance. And up there is an import Super Famicom game. It's a North Star 6. Behind that is 360 games, because I'll quickly go over here. This is what happened with 360. It started to spread from its initial shelf space over here, and then from that, because you can see that it got to a point where there was no more room, any other ones I got went into this pile. Now, there weren't many, so I could just sort of fit them in. So we'll move here. Behind everything is NES games. It is worrying when you get to the point where you can't remember what's behind the other things, and I'm sure when it comes to reorganising this room soon that I'll find things I forgot all about. But some of the newer games I've picked up have just gone on the front. There's a few imports there, and you see a few Mega Drive games, because the shelf down is actually Mega Drive games, but again you can't see them because there's no room. You can see there, import Game Boy Advance. There's American Dreamcast Grandia 2. Behind that, you see there is no real logic to where these games are placed anymore. In here you've got a few Genesis games, Mega Drive games. In front of that, Famicom games. I can't even get my Famicom or Famicom clone system out to even play those at the minute. And some box new recent pickups. Still continuing the Mega Drive behind there. Down here, a random Super Famicom copy of Samurai Spirits, or Samurai Showdown it's known in Europe. And here is import Sonic. You've seen this before, I'm sure. The CDI game stack hasn't really changed, maybe there's been a couple of additions to that. There's a Master System, because it's a lovely looking thing, the original Master System. It's got all the cables somewhere, but just sits on top of my VCR, which is working, thankfully, and not plugged in at the moment though. We move down to the cupboard. Now, for those who watched these videos before, the cupboard hasn't changed too much. The cupboard contains, you've seen that top left hand corner, that's N-Gage, the very small collection of box game gear, and boxed PAL Saturn, and Dreamcast. Every Dreamcast game, bar some Japanese ones, are in here, as are Mega CD, as a 3DO, the GameCube. There's one Japanese Dreamcast game in there, and Saturn import GameCube within that Saturn pile there. There's some demo discs for Saturn and 3DO, and maybe Mega CD as well. And the rest of the PS2 games are in there. Now these are all too deep shelves, so there's games behind these which I have no way of getting to. Down here, as I mentioned before, there's a few recent additions, recent PS2 games. There's some recent Dreamcast games. There's a collection of what are Game Gear games and some Game Boy Advance. There's a box full of Game Boy Advance loose cartridges. Because well, I mentioned before that up here you have the boxes. Well, actually, for accessibility, they're in here, in these cases. Wow. There's stuff under there. I know all my Wii U games are in a box under this lot. I can't get to them. And here there's boxes, arcade sticks, N-Gage. There's a Genesis in that box. That's a Sega Saturn mission stick. Dance mats for the GameCube. There's something in that box, I can't remember. Down here there's a box to light gun for the Saturn and the PlayStation. There's VHS down there, because I don't tend to use VHS a lot, but I need somewhere to put them, so they're down there. Controllers in boxes and bags. This is where I sit to play things in here. It's quite a small little area. This is a retro gaming room. Even though we have slightly newer things like the 360 in here, it still connects by AV, so that works out pretty well. Now, something you won't have seen before is this PlayStation. This is a PlayStation which will play anything. It'll play imports, it'll play copies of games as well. So it's a good all-purpose PlayStation 1, which is running on an RGB SCART lead, so it's got great quality, and it's great to have something with a British power connection that will play the imports, because otherwise I have to get out the converter for the Japanese PS2, which is somewhere, to play the import PS1 games. That's a regular PAL PS2, and see that's a Saturn and a Saturn and a Xbox 360. Here N64, flanked by some American Dreamcast games, and then a Dreamcast, the Wii U, which has some figures. You can see I'm collecting K2SO figures at the moment because he's a great character, and there's another big one of him there. So Wii games, and now if you paid attention earlier, you'll notice that Wii games had to overflow into this strange pile there. There's my Wii games collection. I'm not going to go into detail with anything I've got in this video just because there's so much to cover. I don't want to get bogged down or too long or anything. There's a great CRT TV I've been using for years. It works fine. It's good to have for all these older systems. There's a GameCube. And various controllers and bits and pieces are littered around. The 32X, a very recent addition to my collection. Incredibly happy to have that. It's on top of the original Mark 1 Mega Drive. I guess you'd call it Mark 1, would you? And then there's the Mega CD underneath it. Various import discs actually next to it, in order enabling you to play imports for the PS1, the smaller version of the original console, and also Dreamcast and freeloader for GameCube and freeloader for Wii as well, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think that works though with the current firmware on the Wii that I've got. Oh wow, so I'm going to move a chair out of my way here so you can get a better look at what goes here. This is Overspill DS, PSP, all my Vita games are there, don't have too many, but then Overspill PS1, because this was the original PS1 section here. And that just goes up and up until it gets a bit awkward, so I'm looking forward to clearing that up soon. Recent games I've got go here because there's space in between these two consoles, Super Nintendo as well. I did have some of these figurines on top of my PS2, but since I've been using the PS1 for the Japanese imports, they've sitting here, so it enables all this to be unusable. There's some import PSP games there, there's import PS1, there's a copy of Theme Hospital, there's a figure of Conker. In here, it's full of, there you go, PSP games. Down here, there are DS games. In here, well, there's another drawer at the bottom there, and that contains Dreamcast games and a few other bits and pieces, UMDs and such. Japanese Dreamcast games. This is a drawer that's full of N64 cartridges. This is a drawer that's full of Super Nintendo cartridges. I've been using these Dreamcast light guns recently. There's a couple of Saturn pads there. There's a box for my American copy of Knuckles Chaotix. Super Game Boy in there. Oh, a few more Super Nintendo games. There's some Wii Rock Band cables, I think. Some more PAL Saturn that I was playing that are there. Some DVDs underneath that, I think. That's Wii U gamepad, of course. There's some import N64s and games in there. There's an import N64 somewhere. It might be in there somewhere. Japanese one. A copy of Death Crimson, which was a recent pickup. Some DVDs. A Retro Duo portable Super Nintendo console. I think there's more N64 games there. There's some old Easter eggs. Don't ask me why. And if we spin it around here, the recent PSP pickup that's gone there. This is Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai. It's actually Shin Budokai 2. Since I got this nice and cheap because it was advertised Shin Budokai and it was a bargain. So there we go. Just got the wrong box. Down here, there's more VHS. This is my VHS Star Wars collection. I was collecting the VHS versions of Star Wars. But there's GameCube Overspill here, and on top of it is my little corner of portable consoles. So we've got a DS there, I think that's the 3DS actually, PSP, that's an original Game Boy in there, a red one. There's a Game Boy Advance original, there's a Game Boy Advance SP, there's a Game Boy Color, yeah. There's stuff with a bag of Lego. So I'm going to zoom back out again to just show you that this isn't a very practical room and it's reached a point where I'm happy to say now that I can reorganise it and move some stuff out of here, so this room will actually be usable again. But yeah, that's that's where we're at. So I will give you an update in the future. You'll see exactly what happened to this room eventually, and where some of the stuff that is in this room right now will be ending up. It's I don't want to say anything for certain quite yet, because I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but I do have a plan. And this is a slightly momentous occasion, because this is the last time you'll see this games room like this, I think. It's been a great place where I've really enjoyed playing video games over the years, but it has got to a point where it's very difficult to access the game. So it's not functional, not as functional as it could be. So it is time to rethink this a little. But there we have it. I'm going to leave it right there for this video. So all that's left for me to say now is thank you very much for taking the time to check out another one of these, because I know year to year there's not a lot of difference, or maybe there is, and you tell me what you think about the evolution of this room over the years. If you go back to the very first video I did, this room looks quite different. So thanks again for watching, and until I see you again for another video, it's game on.